I have done a lot of canning and preserving food in my day, but recently I've renewed my interest in pressure canning. With today's unpredictable market and shortages, I thought it'd be a great time, and I'm going to take you along for the ride. I've been busy over the past months, and I have a lot to share with you all. Today I'm going to show you how to can some of that leftover turkey. This is a 14-pound turkey that I roasted with some aromatics of onions, celery, and carrots. I purchased this turkey for the sole purpose of canning, and I didn't add any herbed rub or seasoning. But you can can that leftover Thanksgiving and Christmas turkey. I also added a little more water to the pan because I wanted enough broth to can along with the turkey. Once slightly cooled, I took off the meat and was left with lots of great bones, and I'm going to show you in the future video how I make my turkey bone broth. I will be using my All-American 921 pressure canner, and I just love it. I also have a Presto canner for a backup, and I will leave links below where you can purchase. First, I'm gathering all my equipment and washing my jars, lids, and rings, and while I'm doing that, I'm checking to make sure I don't have any chips or cracks in the jars. Whatever you're canning, you want to make sure that you check the USDA guidelines for what you're canning, hot or raw pack, and the pressure time canning for pints and quarts. You are spending a lot of time, effort, and money to preserve this food for your family, so you want to follow all the guidelines and rules to ensure the lids will seal and the food will be safe. No cheating in this process. I want to mention that I have done pressure canning in the past, but it's been many years, so I wanted to do some researching and self-education to get caught up to date. I first went to the USDA'S Complete Guide to Home Canning and the National Center for Home Food Preservation sites, and there were some things that have changed over the years. I will leave the links to those sites below. I also want to give credit to 2 YouTube channels that have inspired me, and I think they are a wealth of information when it comes to safe home canning. They are Lisa at USDA'S and Linda at Linda's Pantry. Again, I will leave the links to these wonderful channels in the description box below. If you want to be inspired or have any questions about home canning, these are the ladies to watch. I'm filling my quart jars with the turkey, which I shred into nice bite-sized pieces. I'm gently pushing down with my plastic knife and filling about 3/4 of the way full, and I'll be pouring my hot turkey broth over the meat, bringing it up to a 1-inch headspace. I was hoping I would have 7 quarts which would fill my canner, but I only ended up with 6, and that's okay. The next step is quite important, and that is debubbling. You want to use your plastic knife or a wooden chopstick to gently go down along the sides of the jar to release any air bubbles that might be caught on the bottom. This is to ensure a good seal and prevent any siphoning. After the debubbling, I wipe all my rims with white vinegar to remove any fat or oil to ensure a good seal. You don't have to boil the lids anymore, but I do wash and rinse them well. Putting on the rings finger tight, and to me that is turning until I meet a little resistance and then turning another 1/4 inch. You don't want to make them real tight. The key to pressure canning is you want all the air in the jar to escape to preserve the food. I have 2 inches of water in my canner with the bottom rack and heated but not boiling before I place in my jars. I am hot packing, so my jars were warm before I filled, my broth was warm, and I want the water warm so there was no temperature shock. I also added a couple dashes of white vinegar to the water to decrease the mineral deposits on the jars. Unlike water bath canning, with pressure canning you don't want the jars submerged in water. Once the jars are in place, I am locking on the lid and turning my heat up to high. This is another important step in pressure canning and part of the canning process. You want to wait until there is a full steady stream of steam coming out of the vent. Once this happens, set your timer for 10 minutes. During this process, the steam is replacing the air in the canner. After 10 minutes, it's time to put on the jiggler or the weighted gauge. Depending on your location and altitude, you will be pressure canning at 10 pounds or 15 pounds of pressure. My area calls for 10 pounds, and double check the USDA guidelines if you are unsure. Once the pressure gauge comes up to 10 pounds of pressure and the jiggler starts dancing with steam, I'm setting my timer for 90 minutes, which is the pressure time for turkey using quart jars. This is to ensure that the internal temp of the jar and the turkey will reach 240 degrees, so it will kill any bacteria or chance of botulism. Also at this time, I'm going to decrease my stove temperature so I don't have a rolling boil inside, but still maintain the 10 pounds of pressure. Every canner and stove is different, but my sweet spot on my stove is between a 4 and a 5, and I have an electric stove. Just keep an eye on the gauge, and you don't want the pressure to drop below the 10 pounds. For whatever reason, if it does drop, you will need to bring it back up to pressure and start your timing all over again. Once the 90 minutes is up, I'm turning off my heat, letting the pressure gauge come completely down to 0, and this is going to take about 45 minutes. Be patient, and again, this is a very important part of the process. Once the pressure registers 0, I'm going to take off my weighted gauge and again let it go for at least 10 minutes before taking off the lid. I usually let it rest for about 15 minutes or longer, and that is just me. After taking off the lid, I let the jars inside the canner for another 10 to 15 minutes just to acclimate to the kitchen temperature. This is to help prevent any siphoning. As you can see, pressure canning takes some time and patience, and I don't want my time and money to be wasted. And now the fun part, seeing your results. I have 6 quarts of beautiful turkey and broth that I can put on my shelf for future use. Taking the jars out of the canner and placing them on a towel and letting them rest for 12 to 24 hours untouched. If the lid's sealed, you will see the concave bubble in the middle of each lid will now be flat. And if they haven't already sealed, you will hear the golden pop when they do seal. Since I let my jars in the canner a good while after processing, they usually have sealed by the time I remove them. Also, you will notice they will still be boiling when they come out of the canner, so be careful. After 24 hours, remove the rings, check the seals, give the jars a good washing to remove any oil or residue, and label with a date and store on your shelf. I must say, it is so convenient to have canned turkey and broth. I can make soup, make turkey salad, or throw in some vegetables and a thickener to make a gravy and serve over rice, potatoes, or biscuits. I hope you enjoyed this canning video, and I have lots more to show you. Enjoy!